GOP lawmakers are privately telling CNN that they are stunned by Tuesday's bombshell testimony from former Trump White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson.
One senior House Republican who voted against impeachment predicts this evidence was so damaging that it could lead to indictments for Trump and or his allies. Let's discuss with former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh of Illinois. He's the host of the White Flag podcast, and Rina Shah. She's a Republican strategist and a senior advisor for the Republican Women for Progress. Great to see both of you. Congressman, there's always a question of what will move the needle with, Trump's very, very devoted base. And there was one data point that I found interesting today, and that was the Washington Examiner. So this conservative outlet, as you know, it has all sorts of well-known contributors that appear on Fox regularly. And here was their editorial today. Former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson's Tuesday testimony ought to ring the death knell for former President Donald Trump's political career. Trump is unfit to be anywhere near power ever again. What do you think changed yesterday, if anything?
Hey, Ellison, I think it's cumulative. I think these hearings are hurting Trump. The question is how deep and for how long? And I'd remind everybody, in the week after January 6th, I'm in a unique position because I hear from that devoted Trump base every day. And in the week after January 6th, even Trump's most devoted base was back on their heels, and they were disappointed and angry and questioning Trump. And then over time, that was all corrected. The other thing, Ellison, that I'm hearing is from his devoted base, they're not disappointed in his behavior that's coming out during these hearings. What they're telling me is, all of this stuff is going to make it harder for Trump to win in 2024. That's, I think, what's moving them for now away from Trump.
Now, that's the base. Rina, let me ask you about the Republican members of Congress who, as we said at the top, are privately stunned. They're gobsmacked in their offices behind closed doors. Do you see anything, did you hear anything that would suggest, Rina, that they're going to come out and put some names behind this astonishment?
Well, look, it's not a small thing that former Congressman Mick Mulvaney, who went on to serve Trump in the White House, of course, he came out in support of Cassidy Hutchinson. He doesn't think she's lying. So there are people here who support this young woman who's not even close to 30, might I add. They know that she has no reason to lie about what she saw. She was part of the heartbeat of the West Wing. And I'm, of course, no stranger to that kind of thing. I remember on Capitol Hill working for two different Republican members of Congress, sharing sentiments like that when I was frustrated. One big line she said was kind of struck me was he needs to care. And she was, of course, talking about her direct boss, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Look, the reality is this, is whether or not it moves the needle with Trump supporters or not is not the question here. It's whether or not people start to back candidates like Governor Ron DeSantis with more sort of enthusiasm. A long time sentiment in the Republican Party has been a love for our governors, of course, those who get things done. And now with this picture of an unhinged Trump, it certainly bolsters the image. But it also helps, too, that the Trump-endorsed candidates are losing across the country. There's two things at play here.
Well, that leads us to Sean Hannity, Joe. He's confusing because the texts that have come out, I mean, honestly, during the hearings, show that he was very worried in the days before January 6th. He saw the storm cloud, gathering. And so he was sending texts to Mark Meadows like, I'm very worried about the next 48 hours. And then last night, he's just back on the slavish Trump train. I'll just play a little bit of what he was trying to say about, how there's nothing to see here at these hearings.
They were busy with yet another anti-Trump kangaroo court and show trial where the outcome, as we've been telling you, has been and remains predetermined. We see nothing but blind, never-ending rage. What is seemingly an obsessive-compulsive cult-like rage against Donald Trump.
Joe, doesn't Sean want to pivot to a winner at some point?
Hey, Ellison, with all due respect, there's nothing confusing about Sean Hannity. Look, he's a fraud, and he is a Trump cheerleader, and he'll be that way. I mean, Ellison, Hannity would be the last person on the Trump boat. The other thing that just drives me crazy, and Victor, you nailed it, these Republican members of Congress who are privately stunned. Privately. I'm so sick of the privately. I think most of them, Allison, will move to a winner, but we're no way near that yet. Donald Trump is still the prohibitive nominee of this party.
Rina, I want to touch on something you mentioned there about trying to get Mark Meadows to care. Repeatedly, Hutchinson described Mark Meadows sitting on his sofa, scrolling on his phone at some of the crucial moments leading up to and through the insurrection. Let's watch part of the testimony.
I remember him being alone in his office for most of the afternoon, around 2 o'clock to 2:05. Around 2 o'clock to 2:05, you know, we were watching the TV and I could see that the rioters were getting closer and closer to the Capitol. Mark still hadn't popped out of his office or said anything about it. Watching the TV, Chief? He was like, yeah. The rioters are getting really close. Have you talked to the president? He said, no, he wants to be alone right now. And I remember thinking in that moment, Mark needs to snap out of this, and I don't know how to snap him out of this, but he needs to care.
He needs to care. It's really a devastating portrait that she painted there of the chief of staff just scrolling on his phone as there were rioters approaching the Capitol.
Yeah, the chief of staff to the president of the United States was so very passé about one of his bros in Congress, Mike Pence. I remember being in the halls of Congress and watching the two of them, how they got along, Mike Pence and Mark Meadows, when they served together there, how they got along so well. And here he was, you know, they were calling for Mike Pence to be hung, and Mark Meadows just does not care, it seems. So, look, that's frustrating. But the big picture here is that democracy is fragile, and it takes principled, good people with good morals and values to say something's wrong here. They should be the people who are able to decipher between right and wrong. Sadly, in this case, it was a woman, so young and not older, more experienced people. But listen, the reality is that Trumpism can be defeated. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but as long as fear and division and demonizing the Democrats is the playbook of the Republicans, which it will be for a very long time, more and more people will start to understand that's not the American way. Already last night in conservative Utah, we saw John Curtis and Blake Moore, two candidates that both won primaries, and they both voted for the January 6th Select Committee. So that tells you, again, Trumpism can be defeated. Maybe not next hour, maybe not tomorrow, but down the line it can be.
Yeah, and we saw some losses in Colorado for some election deniers in the primary as well. Rina Shah, Joe Walsh, thank you both.
Thank you, guys.